Today's Happy Habits program is looking at oxytocin. And oxytocin is another one of the happy hormones, but this one is to do with how connected we feel to other people, how connected we feel with ourselves, and the sense of love and belongingness that we have within ourselves and within relationships. But my focus is going to come from the angle from self-love, because the more we do for ourselves, the more self-love that we have, the more love then that we have to give. And the real focus here today is that we are already whole people, and we have inside of us everything that we already need. So all it takes is a wee bit of understanding ourselves better to be able to meet our own needs. And in that way, we can communicate it far better in our relationships and understand others more too. So that's what today's focus will be. Now, in understanding ourselves more, I want to begin by just looking quickly at our brain again. And all this is to do with the signals that the brain receives, and whatever the information is that the brain gets tells it whether or not to produce this oxytocin. So the brain basically has been absorbing information like a sponge. You've heard about veins being sponges, but generally speaking, our brains are like that too. They're always absorbing information through what we see, what we smell, what we hear, what we can feel, like gut feelings, actual physical sensations. So there's so much going on all of the time, and our brain's taking it all in. But because there's so much happening to us, there's something like 400 million pieces or maybe billion pieces of information available to our brain per second. But obviously we can't process all of that. So we have a reticular activating system in our brain. And basically it's a filter that looks for patterns. So when it's looking for patterns, it's finding out what's relevant for you so that it can form neural pathways and subconscious responses to daily life, basically based on what it has been exposed to so far. And that really helps you to get by in everyday life according to what is most relevant to your needs, given whatever the brain has been exposed to. So it plays a part in the habits that we have that are already there. And the habits that we have are already there have always been developed because of some type of positive intention. But as we know, what we've looked at already is that although there's a positive intention behind the things that we already have in place, sometimes they aren't always the best way to get the outcomes that we're hoping for. And if you look at my videos on serotonin and dopamine, I talk a lot more about that. And we'll touch on it again today in our examples. So really, if we want to form new habits, we have to choose on purpose to expose our mind to new content, new information and new data. So again, this is where we have to focus our awareness on what is available to our brain. And it's simple things like, what TV are you watching? What's the messages on there? What's it saying about what's healthy weight, or what's it saying about what healthy eating means or doesn't mean? And it doesn't have to be things that you're being told directly. The brain's just absorbing whatever information there is. So the example that I think is most straightforward is when we looked at the thought before of believing I'm fat if your jeans don't fit. The information that tells our brain that that's a pattern, that's something that we should think, is the things like the mannequins in the shop and the people that we see modeled on TV and the magazines and all. That's not directly telling us necessarily that if you don't look this way that you're fat, but our brain tries to make meaning out of everything. So nothing means anything except the meaning our brain gives to it. So we want to really focus on how can we change the content that our brain's exposed to so that our automatic responses aren't telling us things that aren't helpful for us, because it doesn't mean that we're fat if we don't look like somebody who's in a magazine. It just means we have a different body shape is really all that it means. But our brain sends us that signal as an automatic response based on whatever it has been exposed to, whether we're aware of it or not. So we want to really start working on our awareness. And to increase your awareness, now you really want to think about what your thoughts, look at what your thoughts, your feelings and your actions are, because this is your internal cycle of well-being. And I'm responsible for my thoughts, feelings and actions, no matter what my brain's been exposed to. But I don't necessarily recognize what they are unless I start to on purpose choose to pay attention. So if I'm having thoughts about being fat, it doesn't necessarily require me looking at where that came from and why that might be. But it's just about recognizing that that's there for a positive reason, and that might be, for example, like we said, that it's trying to help us to make positive choices and get a good positive outcome instead. But it's misinformed, because what we believe isn't always what the truth is. So it's bringing awareness to our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. And each one of these that we have already, after every event, will be an automatic response that's there to help us. It just sometimes is a wee bit outdated. So your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions all influence each other. If I think things like I'm fat, like people don't care about me, like I'm stupid, then that's really negative self-talk. And that's not self-love. So if I have that narrative in my mind, then my brain is being signaled that I don't need oxytocin, that I might need some of the stress hormones instead, and I'm feeling a wee bit low and a wee bit lethargic. And then that influences my actions, and my actions might be to avoid going out and seeing my friends or socializing or things like that. And then I might start to think about how lonely I am and how I don't have anybody near me. And again, that's telling our brain that we don't have oxytocin. So we want to work on our self-love or self-talk so that our brain knows to produce oxytocin. And the more loving we have for ourselves, the more loving we can give out as well. Now, awareness precedes change, I'm sure you've heard, and it can be a wee bit hard to bring our awareness to what our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are. But it's a wonderful place to be able to understand ourselves, because the more you know you, the more empowered you are, because you can take back control of your well-being regardless of your circumstance and regardless of other people. So then with that as well, like it says there, if you accept yourself for you, then you're invincible. That sense of security and that confidence that comes with that can only really come whenever we have acceptance and self-talk that's positive and reassuring, and really encourages us. So you want to be your own cheerleader, because you will always be there for you. You are always going to be the person who's there with yourself. So we want to make the mind a nice place to be, don't we? So to make the mind a nice place to be, then I want to focus on the self-talk first. So say we'll just go through this one wee example today. Maybe the thing that happens, the trigger is always things that happen. It can be somebody knocks into you in a corridor in the shopping centre, or it can be car crash, or it can be anything. It can be something really, really small and simple. And when the wee small simple things build up, then we're like a pot over boiling, aren't we? Or it can be the more tragic, drastic things that happen that cause changes in this internal cycle of well-being. Because after things happen, we have an automatic thought about them, and then that results. The result of that then is the way that we feel, and the way that we feel impacts how we act or how we react. So think about this in terms of relationships. Whether or not your brain's being signaled to produce oxytocin will depend on what you're thinking and how you're feeling. So if you're thinking that somebody doesn't care about you because they didn't do the dishes, right? You might be thinking they do not give any SH1Ts about me and everything that I've done when they didn't even do them dishes, knowing rightly that I was tired and whatever. That would leave you feeling annoyed, and rightly so. Your feelings are valid. All feelings are valid. I never like to hear anybody say I shouldn't have felt that way, because yes, you should. Your feelings are valid. But what's the positive intention behind them, and is it serving you well? Because it's coming from a positive place. It has a good positive intention for you, and you want to get a good outcome from this. But sometimes the ones that are there, these automatic responses that are there, they don't always get us the outcome that we want. So unfortunately, our reaction or our action might be to argue with somebody, and maybe that's not what we wanted. We just wanted them to understand that it's important for us that they do the dishes. So then how are we going to get the positive self-talk? Well, as we've said in the past, thoughts, feelings, actions, they all influence each other. And see, if you're already feeling good, it's far easier to have positive self-talk, because thoughts and feelings influence each other, as well as thoughts influencing feelings. Feelings also influence thoughts. Everything's easier when we feel good. But what I don't have capacity here for is to do all the energy healing work, because feelings are energy. There are thoughts that have manifested as energy, and there's types of science out there that can, measure it and do all sorts of things to prove that it's energy. So that's your things like your Reiki, your kinesiology, your meditation, pranic healing, anything like that's all energetic work that's really useful for shifting any energies that aren't serving us. And again, that allows us to welcome love in and to feel it more fully again too, because when we have unserving energies building up in our energetic body, then that makes it more difficult to have the positive self-talk and the positive thoughts. So with the feeling side of this today, I would say that you want to think about who you know who can do energetic sort of work on your energy body too. But we're going to focus on what you can do yourself with the thinking. So you might believe then that somebody doesn't care about you, and your action might be to argue, and now that reinforces then any negative energies that aren't serving us well, because then we spread it and we attract it. Now, if your thought is that somebody doesn't care about you, that's an example of negative self-talk, because if you're telling yourself someone doesn't care about you, then that is really impacting the way that you're feeling, and your internal psyche and what's happening in your mind is impacting your well-being. So if that causes you to argue, then if they respond to you arguing with them with more arguing, then it reinforces your internal belief that they don't care. Because if you want me to do dishes for you and you try to get me to do it by arguing with me, I'm less likely to want to be kind. Whereas if you're kind to yourself first and you're saying to yourself, it doesn't mean they don't care about me. Is it a fact? Is it a fact that they don't care about me? Well, no, that's not a fact. How do I know that's not a fact? Because do you mind the time they give me a hug randomly? Or do you mind the day that they just come home with my favourite chocolate or whatever? They showed me ways that they cared about me in different ways. And we'll get on to this now too. So it's not a fact that they don't care about me. The fact is they didn't do the dishes and I wanted them to. But that doesn't mean that they don't care about me. So if I want to be kind to myself, I have to remind myself of the reasons why other people care about me and the reason why I care about myself too. So the positive intention behind this thought is just to try to bring out some self-care, to try to make sure that things that are important for me are done because it matters to me. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get a good positive intention here and make sure that my needs are met. But is thinking they don't care and arguing serving me well? And what might the positive intention behind the arguing be? Well, in my experience, it would be that the hope is that the person learns that it's important to me that they do the dishes when it helps me to feel good and feel cared for. So if that's what I'm trying to communicate, then I can come at it with a far nicer approach. It's important to me when the dishes are done, because when you do something like that, what it means for me is that you care about me and you value the things that I do here. Then somebody's not going to get their back up if you're approaching them with just how you're feeling and what it means for you, because you're not attacking them and they don't need to get defensive. So it means there's a lot more open communication. And again, if you're reminding yourself that that's not what it means, that although there's a positive intention behind thinking they don't care, that it's still possible that they actually do, then internally there's more self-love there, because you're being nurturing and caring to yourself. So you're more able to do that for someone else then when you approach them about things. So what's the positive intention behind their action might just be something that you want to consider. And what we're going to get on to is about what it means to me versus what it means to them. So very simply, what does the trigger of dishes not being done mean to me about the fact that they're not done? And what does it mean to the person who was asked or expected to do them who didn't do them? It might mean to them that them not being done isn't that significant, and it doesn't actually signify whether or not they care about a person or not. That for them it's not that big a deal and their rest was more significant. Perhaps for them not doing the dishes at the time that you thought that they would be done was because what they were trying to do was have a more meaningful interaction with you when you get home. If they were well rested, you don't know, maybe they're burnt out in their work and they just don't see having dishes done as something that is actually that meaningful and significant. So that would depend on what their patterns of information were over their life course. Everybody as an individual, even people who are brought up in the same households, learn different meanings about things being done or not done. depending on what their brain has learned to seek out as a pattern. So what it means to me doesn't mean the same as what it means to someone else. And what it means to me, if I can communicate that calmly without arguing, then I'm more likely to get the outcome that I want to achieve. Whereas the arguing comes from that kind of reactive state of, and it all happens kind of just really quickly, and we're not always aware of it initially. But later we might find that after you're done arguing, and there's a bit of tension and there's a bit of time and space from each other, then you might be able to come around and say, all I really wanted you to know was that it's important to me that you do the dishes. So when we know what it means to us, whether or not it's done, we can get directly to the outcome that we want to achieve first with a softer approach. And again, if you can be loving and kind to yourself and your own thoughts, then you can be loving and kind and compassionate to someone else. Because with compassion, then we're far more likely to relate to somebody. And again, they don't have to get their back up when you're asking them what something means to them, because you're treating them with compassion instead of defense and anger. So it's really simple just to consider. And again, it's about bringing our awareness to what's going on for us ourselves. And that allows us to communicate our own needs to other people too. And again, in the positive self-talk, if you're able to allow yourself rest and be kind to yourself first, then again, you're more accepting of other people doing it too. So if you were denied the right to rest before the dishes were done and someone else wasn't, then you would resent them resting instead of doing it. But if you understood about yourself what something meant to you, then you could recognize that actually it's a wee bit of work that you need to allow for yourself. Is them annoying, or is them resting annoying me because they're resting? Or is it annoying me because I don't feel that I have permission to do it? So we want to look at then ourselves and what does love and care and rest and all mean for us. And this really is kind of looking at then, it is exactly looking at your love language. So what does it mean for you to be shown love and to be shown compassion? If it's really significant to you that someone loves you because of what they do for you, like doing dishes, that's an example of acts of service being your love language. And if you do those things for yourself, you're reinforcing to yourself that you love and care for you, as opposed to you doing it for someone else. If you're coming at it from the angle that I'm doing this because it's important to me, then you're really acting in it from a place of love for your own needs and your own wellness. And again, we tend to speak to other people in our love language instead of theirs. So because everybody's patterns of information is different, then everybody also has, well, usually different people have different love languages. And the person that you're in a family relationship with, or a friendship with, or a romantic relationship with, aren't going to be people who necessarily have the same love language as you. So if you're expecting somebody, or well, actually no, take away the expectation. If you don't understand that your love language is, for example, acts of service, then you might not understand that it doesn't actually mean that someone doesn't care about you when they don't perform acts of service. If their love language is gift giving, for example, so if you were bought a bunch of flowers but the dishes weren't done, that wouldn't say to you that I'm loved. And what would say that to you is your one need being met. So we can do this for ourselves first, to recognize that we are loving to us, and then we can be more likely to do it to others. But in the same way, we tend to say, and I cleaned your room and I made your dinner and you didn't even do them dishes for me. Dishes is a big thing in my house, as you can tell. But what I'm doing there is I'm referring from my own actions in the hope that that's what will be perceived. We tend to treat other people in the way that we want them to treat us. So we need to understand what our love language is so that we can communicate that to the people who want to show us love, as well as be able to do it for ourselves. So my love language, my strongest love language, is actually quality time. So gift giving isn't that significant for me. It's nice and meaningful for me, but it doesn't communicate the same sense of love, and I don't get the same signals of oxytocin as strongly as I do as when quality time is achieved or received with people. So for my birthday and for Christmas and things, I'd far rather see my friends for a coffee or a couple hours on the sofa than have them bring me a present as kind of my love language. But if their love language is gift giving, then they're going to keep giving me gifts because they're trying to tell me they love me. And then they might not think I love them because I might not give them gifts. I'd rather spend time with them. So when we know what our own love language is, we can help people understand then what's meaningful to us. And we just have more harmony in our relationships in that way. But we're more likely, I have to repeat and repeat and repeat, we're more likely to be willing to try someone else's love language for them if we're willing to do that for ourselves first. So we must always be willing to do for ourselves what we will do for other people so that we have a feeling of security and love in our own life. And that helps to minimize loneliness and things too. So let's look at just a few brief examples now of what you can do with each of these love languages. And if you are interested in finding out what yours is, please do look up a quiz on Google and it'll tell you, you'll have like a stronger percentage of one. All of us kind of find each one a wee bit relevant at times, but you might have a stronger percentage of one of these being your strongest love language. So do this, do it with your teenagers, do it with your friends, and then find out more about what's important to each other as individuals. So now we're going to look at the actions, and if we're carrying out love language actions, then again we're sending the signals now to produce oxytocin. In the same way, if we're getting positive self-talk in there, we're reassuring ourselves that I care about me, I care about myself, other people care about me. Then because thoughts manifest into feelings as energy, then we attract what we believe and we attract what we feel. So we need to practice that self-talk first by minimizing any negatives. And now we'll look at the actions of the things that can send the signal to produce oxytocin too. So regardless of which one of these love languages is your most interested one, I would encourage you to do positive affirmations anyway. So words of affirmations is one of the love languages, and you can write out positive affirmations. You can record yourself saying them out loud, listen to them in your sleep. You can have them on display. So I have clay cups that have positive affirmations on the inside. I have positive affirmations near my mirror, just anywhere, because your brain is still always absorbing this information, whether you're choosing to look at it or not. But of course, in the beginning, while we're trying to make the habit strong, we want to be really reinforcing this information and this data in their brain. So you want to be repeating positive affirmations daily for a minimum of 6 times before it's recognized as a pattern. And then if you want it to be enforced as a habit, you have to do it 21 days consistently in a row for the habit to form, and 66 days in a row of reinforcing positive affirmations on purpose for that to be a strong embedded subconscious pattern, which means that positive thinking then becomes more natural to you. So you've heard hurt people hurt people. So if I'm critical of myself, then I am equally critical of other people too. And if my patterns of content that my brain has been exposed to starts within, from me being critical of me, maybe I've heard it outside, maybe people have been critical of me in the past, maybe I've been bullied, or maybe I've just heard that people generally are critical of themselves. So now I've subconsciously learned that that's what I should do too. Then what happens is we tend to engage in conversations where we're more critical of others than we are praising. And we don't always mean to do that. We kind of catch ourselves having done it. So if you're doing it for yourself first, then it's easier to do about other people as well. And you kind of get over that cringe phase after them first 6 days. Well, that's the theory anyway. And I should say, actually, just before I move on here to physical touch, that if you want to design your own personalized positive affirmations for you, what I tend to do is write out sentences of, first of all, how would I like to be described by others? Or what do I want to be? And once I have established that, then I change it to I am. So I am worthy. I am loved. I am smart. I am rich. And you repeat that to yourself. And then when it becomes a subconscious pattern, your brain does the work then after the 66 days of embedding it to reinforce why that is true. So our brains always believe that the information they have is right and the best information for us. So it will always keep trying to reinforce what it already knows and keep trying to make meaning out of everything. So physical touch is another love language. And if you, like me in the beginning of my relationship, struggled with hand holding and hugging and all that, it's probably because it just wasn't big in your household. Or, even just as yourself, some families have just one person who aren't that into the physical hugging and that. You're either a hugger or you're not. So for me, and for you as well, what you can do is you can be loving to yourself by hugging yourself. So the more kind I am to me, and more loving I am to me, the more I am able to do that for other people. My nieces and nephews, my friends, all of that, who all think it's hilarious now that I actually do hug them. So if you hug yourself for 10 seconds, literally, you're just crossing your arms over your chest, hug yourself for 10 seconds. That's enough for your brain to receive the signal to produce oxytocin. You can fall asleep like this. You can just do it at any time of day. Pretend that you're cold if you want. It's a bit weird, probably, if you're not used to physical touch. But then the more we do this for ourselves, once again, you can give from a cup that is full. So you need to fill your own cup first to be able to do this for other people, especially if the people that you love and you want to show your love to, their love language is physical touch, then you can get more able to do that by doing it for yourself first. You can massage your own hands, massage your own neck, massage your own feet if they're washed, even just doing, your face, your skincare, that's physical touch. And that it produces serotonin to do your skincare, but it also produces oxytocin because self-care acts are a self-loving act as well. So once more, you're getting the oxytocin released. And other people are less annoying when we have oxytocin. I'm just telling you that as a secret now. Now, retail therapy wasn't invented for nothing. Treat yourself. There is truth in it. If it's done as a reward, if you give yourself a treat for having accomplished something, then it produces dopamine. But also gift giving is, if it's part of your love language, if you're willing to treat yourself, then you're telling yourself that you need oxytocin and you're feeling more connected with yourself. So if you're speaking to yourself in your own love language and producing oxytocin, you feel a deeper connection to you. And the more you know you, again, we said we're more empowered, but the more connected you feel within yourself and the less loneliness experiences we have. And the more we know ourselves, the more fully we can deeply connect with other people too. So it's really, really powerful. So treat yourself in any way. If you're willing to do it for someone else, then do it for yourself too. Acts of service. So what things do you do for you that are self-loving? Again, we're talking about our self-care. Now, I'm not going to get on about the dishes again. But really, if you're doing that for yourself and not from the angle of having done it for someone else, then it's a loving act for you. If you're organising your clothes and things for yourself because you like it, then you're communicating to your brain that there's a loving act taking place here and oxytocin needs to be released. Any of the wee things that you can do for yourself, going out, doing your hair, planning your meals, anything like that at all. And of course, you can see a pattern now that a lot of these are interlinked because our meal prep really helps with our serotonin too. Booking yourself a massage, taking yourself for a run. If it's something that is a service to you, for you, that says to you and reinforces to you that you're valuable and you're worthy, then you're signaling to your brain that a loving act's taking place here for me, by me, and you're getting oxytocin. And I know I'm repeating myself here, but the more you can do and allow for yourself, the more able you are to do that for others, and the more other people understand what love means for you, and they might then be more willing, and they're more likely to be more willing to see what works well for you and want to do that for you as well. Because people do care about us, and people are inherently good. They really want to be kind, and they model what they see. So if I see you treating yourself to a massage, I know that you like that, and I'll be more willing to want to give that for you as well, because I love you and I care about you too. So I'll do what I see being modeled. And not only will I do for you what I see being modeled for you, but it subconsciously gives me permission to do it for myself as well. So I am more willing to do what I see is accepted in the people who are my role models. Um, so if for example, my tutors or my friends or my family members are modeling self-care themselves, that says to me that it's okay for me to do that for myself too. So quality time is something that is my own love language, my strongest one. And if I am not meeting this need for myself, it does not matter how many people I spend how many days and hours with. If I have not met my own needs first, I will not feel connected. And that's just from personal experience, that I need to sit with me. And one of the ways that I do this daily is I practice Ho'oponopono. And this is like a meditation or a prayer, and there's lots of different ways you can incorporate it into your life. But it does have a powerful energetic change and shift in our relationships too and in our life. And it's very simply 4 sentences. Now, and the way that I repeat it is just the way that I'm comfortable with, but the way that I say the structure is: I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. These 4 sentences are what you say, but in the order that you say them is entirely what's right for you. You can say this prayer or meditation to yourself to connect with you, to apologize for not meeting your needs, for not seeking out your own love language for yourself, for anything at all. It doesn't even have to be anything specific that you focus on, but this here is given acknowledgement and gratitude and love to you. But we can also focus our energy on others as well. So if we're feeling a bit of tension or energetic things between someone else, when you come into a room and 2 people have just fell out, there's an energy build up there. And this here can really help to mend that blockage if it's focused on another person. Or you can, if you choose to, you can say these words to other people, but it's enough to do it energetically. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And we can let our ego go and our conscious mind rest while we practice this, because we do not need to get specific on what we're saying sorry for or what we need forgiveness for. It is simply a meditation that we can put our focus on. And this is mine, but I do it by listening to music on YouTube that is Ho'oponopono music, and sometimes I do the sentences repeatedly in my head as I fall asleep, focusing on myself or focusing on the people in my life. So that is something you can do to spend quality time with you. And again, it's sending the signal. You're literally saying I love you to yourself. So your brain is hearing that and producing oxytocin. You're feeling far more connected with the people around you and with yourself. It's really, really powerful. Everything you need is already within you. Other people can help us to feel loved and validated and supported, but everything you need is already within you. So allow yourself permission to practice self-care and self-love. And I know that there are a lot of things in society and that our mind is aware of subconsciously that makes that difficult. And I really, really appreciate how difficult it is. But please allow yourself permission to meet your own needs and practice self-love. I hope you know you are already whole as you are, and I hope that you find joy and love and connection in practicing finding out more about yourself to become more empowered and to have more full relationships and to have lots and lots of oxytocin as well to help that. So I encourage you to practice any of the love language tips that we've briefly covered. Look up love language quiz on Google and find out what yours is. If you want to take it any further, you can look up your attachment quiz as well, your attachment style quiz, and that'll help us to understand why we interact and communicate in the way we do too. And always, always, always pay attention to your automatic thoughts after a trigger. Write down what they are, bring acknowledgement to them, thank them for being there and for their positive intention. Thank your feelings that you bring acknowledgement to for their positive intention, and thank your actions as well for the positive intention that they have for you, and recognize from that acknowledgement whether or not it serves you well, and if it doesn't, then give yourself permission to make change where change is necessary. But be kind always, and be patient with yourself, because you are always doing what seems to be best for you, even when that doesn't make sense given your current reality. And that might be hard to wrap your head around, but our brains really need to be given new information, and they can always be retrained and retaught, which is really significant. So I wish you all well, and thank you so much for your time.